Coming up this week on Sporting Journal Radio.
When I fished the Classic, that was the 12th tournament that I'd fished in my lifetime.
So one of the resorts is starting to ice fish up in the northwest angle.
Satellite-derived water temperature as well as water clarity.
I fish, I hunt, and always will. Broadcasting from the Eau Claire Outdoors Studios. Presented by OnX. Know where you stand with OnX. We're not just a radio show anymore. This is Sporting Journal Radio.
That's right. Welcome to the show. I'm Bret Amundson. Thanks for tuning in on the network, by demand, sportingjournalradio.com, or by watching this on YouTube. Thank you for joining us. Dan Amundson's right over there. What's up, Dan?
Hey.
David Eckhardt back in studio. David, what's up?
Hello.
Were you in studio last week?
Nope. I was shingling.
Shingling.
Shingling in December.
Oofda. It doesn't feel like December, though.
No, it doesn't.
As well, on what day was it? Wednesday last week, I think, I suppose, after we recorded this. I was outside getting ready to leave to go film a deer hunt with Danny Thompson, and it was December 6th or December 7th, and I was in a T-shirt outside.
It was 60 degrees.
60 degrees, yeah.
59. Close enough to 60.
Nutty. Well, we're going to talk about what this weather is doing to deer hunters, duck hunters, pheasant hunters, ice anglers, and more coming up. We got a pretty cool show. We got Trevor Lo joining us, and I apologize, Trevor. I appreciate you coming on the show this week. We were supposed to have him on, I don't know, it was a month ago,
at least
2 months ago, something like that. And we just got fall's a busy time, and we had a crazy week. We had to bump him back, so I appreciate him coming on short notice. So we're going to talk about some open water fishing, bass fishing. He was the let me see what I got to read this off of here. He was the college champion in his first year fishing in college. He won the Carhartt Bassmaster College Series in 2015. So I think that was his first year fishing in the college series. He won it. That qualified him for the Bassmaster Classic in 2016. So imagine, I don't know how old he was, maybe 18 or 19, I suppose. I don't know how old he was when he went to college, but winning that in his first year, and then even if he was 20, 21, 22, first year, and then going to fish the Bassmaster Classic.
It's like winning the punt, kick, and pass contest in high school and then going to the Super Bowl.
Right.
Like, now you're doing the kickoff at the Super Bowl, and you got to kick the game-winning field goal.
So we're going to talk to Trevor about that experience coming up. He's also with Omnia, and they have some cool new features he's going to tell us about to help you catch more fish this year. So we'll also have Joe Henry on to get an ice fishing report, ice conditions report from Lake of the Woods here in just a little bit. And we're going to talk about food plots and more coming up. But first, Dan, who are this week's sponsors?
Live Target. Match the hatch at livetargetlures.com. Lake of the Woods Tourism. Lake of the Woods is the walleye capital. Plan a trip for this winter at lakeofthewoodsmn.com. Haybell Heights Campground and Resort. Book a trip to Devil's Lake. Learn more at haybellheights.com. Ottertail Lakes Country. Find your inner otter at ottertaillakescountry.com. And Prairie Sportsman. New season is coming at the end of January, but watch episodes anytime at the Prairie Sportsman YouTube channel.
I got a brand new North American Waterfowl podcast that you can listen to now on the Sporting Journal Radio YouTube channel, or look for the North American Waterfowl podcast wherever you get your favorite podcasts. It's all about bands. So we went in search of the craziest band story we'd ever heard of, and we've got episode 2 in that series of podcasts available now. Go to NorthAmericanWaterfowl.com to learn more all about that show. Dan, Toyota sent us this RAV4. I know we talked about it last week on the show. You had a chance to drive around a little bit. Kind of a fun vehicle to rip around.
I drove it for exactly 8 miles, I think, because that's enough to be where I went. Well, yeah, I actually, so when I got to my destination and I was leaving my destination to come back home, it's got the key fob. You just have it in your pocket and you just press the button. And I've driven a few cars like that. So normally, like my mom has a Jeep, and sometimes you drive that and you press the button and it doesn't start for some reason. I don't know why, but it just doesn't, and so you got to hit it again. Well, yeah. So I hit this one. Like, I don't think it started. All the accessories come on, the radio come on. Like, doesn't sound like it starts, so I hit it again. They all shut off. Like, well, what the heck? Do I not have the fob in my pocket? Did I leave it somewhere? Hit it again. It's not coming on. What the heck? Well, it's a hybrid. And so it was turning on. I just couldn't hear it because it's quiet. And I finally realized that. I'm like, let's just see what happens if I put it in reverse. And I start going backwards and I drive home. So it was It was a quiet vehicle.
That's literally the exact experience I had first time I drove it too. I finally just put it in gear because maybe I told this story, but I was moving some other vehicles around in the driveway, so I parked that Toyota RAV4. It's a Woodland Edition RAV4 hybrid. I'd moved it out of the way to move these other trucks around and left it running. And when I came back to it, it had shut off. And I'm like, oh, it's eco-friendly, electric, hybrid, whatever. It shuts itself off to save the planet. So I couldn't start it. And the same thing, finally, I'm like, I'm just going to put it in gear and see what happens. And sure enough, it started moving. I'm like, wow. So it's got a couple of different modes to it that I learned a little bit with this. It's got a trail mode. So it does have, it's not the Toyota TRD off-road package, but it's got a trail mode. So it has some off-road capabilities with this Woodland Edition. It basically will send power and braking to different wheels. So if like your back right wheel is spinning or something like that, it'll put some power to the other wheels to help try to get it out, and some braking. And there's some engineer speak that I don't understand necessarily with how that works. But there's also an electric vehicle mode. So it will, if you've got the battery charged up enough, it will run on the battery. And it's super quiet, and it's a very low speed, and it's a very short range for this particular model. But I thought it might be kind of a neat application to use it, like if you're trying to drive into your, near your deer stand, or you're trying to get in where you're going to duck hunt or something like that. And you need to get in there quietly. It's a way to get in there super, super quietly. So here, Dan, play that RAV1 video. So that's what it sounds like. I mean, there's a little bit of noise there, obviously, but that's what it sounds like when it starts up and it rolls in that EV mode. And
that's mostly just the gravel on the tires, is my guess.
That's what you're hearing.
There's no engine noise.
But there were a couple of moments where, and I had Danny Thompson with me, there were a couple of moments where it sounded like a spaceship. And when Dan's ready, we'll play this next video here. And this audio is nutty. And to be fair, I don't know what is making that noise yet, but it happened a lot. I'm sure it's something to do with the battery or whatever. Maybe it's wouldn't be charging without the motor running. So I don't know. So there are moments where it's very, very quiet, and then there's a couple of moments like that where deer are thinking that it's the mothership coming down to beam them, up into outer space. It
almost sounded like a speaker. I wonder if it's like a white noise to
help you fall asleep,
to let people know that it's moving.
Oh, like
so you don't hit a pedestrian.
It's an intentional noise. Oh,
I don't know. I think you're wrong.
I don't know.
That's my guess.
Well, who's going to hear that? We're all deaf. All hunters are deaf.
Right.
And no one in the city's going to hear that. And nobody crosses the street if you're not in the city.
Maybe
You're wrong.
Could just be a safety thing.
Could be. We'll do a little bit more research, but if you know, comment below and let us know if you know what's making that noise right there. And I did, since Toyota sent it to me to drive around, I didn't want to really take it off road too much and put it through too much strenuous activity. But this is one video. It's still on the road, but this is one video where you can kind of get a better look at the vehicle. And it's the Woodland Edition, so I made sure I was in the woods, and there's a big rock next to the road, which I thought was kind of cool. But so it's a RAV4, so it's a compact SUV. I was able to get a big Yeti cooler in the back. You can fold down the back seats and actually lay down in there. It'd be a little cramped for a guy our height over 6 feet, but you could sleep back there. The Woodland Edition trim is not their most high trim package, but it's got like mud mats and mud flats, and it's got that trail mode and things like that. So it was kind of a neat vehicle, and I didn't do the math right away, and I probably didn't drive it as economically as I could have, but I drove it for 250 miles or so the first day. I was getting 35 miles to the gallon with it.
No way!
So not bad. Not bad. My Highlander, which was not a hybrid, I was getting 29, 30 miles to the gallon with that too. So, but I think that RAV4 Woodland would have done better off-road than my Highlander, but that one was pretty good. So where I was with that is I was deer hunting with Danny Thompson, and had a chance. He's known from Garmin, known as ice fishing, but he loves to deer hunt. And he has managed some properties, put in a bunch of food plots. Here is an example of him talking about one of his food plots.
Got the goods.
What do you got there?
Got the goods right here. This is what I was saying. I mean, going with a quality seed, and you know, a lot of people like to forget the fertilizer step of the whole food plot, and it does cost you a little bit of money, but I mean, look at the size of that bulb. And these are planted later July. You can go a little bit earlier, but we got a later growing season here, so I mean, in a short growing season, getting some pretty good bulbs out of this stuff. That's awesome.
So you can learn a little bit more about what Danny does for his food plots, how he manages his property. Actually, if you're going to film two videos with Danny, one for the new season of Prairie Sportsman coming up, and then one also for our Fish Hunt Forever YouTube channel. David, he brings up fertilizing food plots. Do you use fertilizer on yours?
Yeah, some of them I do. I try to fertilize them every couple of years. How do you rotate?
How do you do that?
I just go to the elevator and get a 5-gallon pail and mix it up. And
so that's like, and then you just spread it like seed, basically?
Yeah, it's just a granular. So yeah, broadcast it.
Okay. So that's one thing. Danny, I think he's starting to love planning food plots more than the actual deer hunt itself. I mean, he loves to hunt deer, and he's got 2 young daughters. He brings them out deer hunting. But I think he just loves to manage the property now and plant food plots.
Yeah, I like planting food plots. You know, you can put as much time or as little time into it as you want, but you get out what you put into it, really.
So we were talking off the air a little bit about your seed mixture that you use. He uses Domain, and he's got a Brassica mix, which I think he is using as like a late season food plot. But because of the mild weather we're having this year, he wants to do like a half and half, something that's a little bit more mid-season and late season, since there's, you know, really no snow on the ground right now. So deer aren't hitting the food plot like he was hoping it would be this time of year. What do you do, David?
So the mix I plant is 40% radish, 30% rapeseed, 30% purple top turnips. And then I plant them mid to late July to that first week of August is when I try to get them planted and hope you get some rain, which we didn't really get this year. So
yeah,
that one in the picture there, though, that one caught a couple extra rains and turned out pretty good. It was, you know, top of your boot to knee high in a couple spots. And yeah, the deer have eaten it down pretty far.
Gosh, that's all. We just needed to see a deer in the food plot like that. We couldn't buy a deer while we were, of course, because we were trying to film it. We couldn't get deer coming in on camera. I saw a 4-wheeler in that picture there. Now, obviously, you're a farmer, so you got access to tractors and combines and planters and things like that. Do you plant your food plots like you're planting a big field of corn, or do you have do you use your wheeler? Do you got a small tractor? What do you do?
Yeah, so I've got a small tractor with a disc and a digger and a brush mower, but some of the plots I can't get my tractor into, so I'll spray them and then run the drag over them. Then I've got a little digger that I can pull behind my 4-wheeler too and scratch it up enough to get good seed bed.
So that, I mean, you could basically do everything with your wheeler then.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yep.
Because I want to get I really want to start doing food plots. I'm kind of excited about this now.
And that digger in that picture is probably well over 100 years old.
Is that right?
Yeah.
No kidding.
It was my grandpa's. I came from my grandpa, and yeah, when he was.
So they're probably pulling it with horses.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow. Jeez. That's cool. Then we've come a long ways.
Yeah. He called it a quack grass digger. Then it's actually 2 sections, but I only use the one. But yeah, they pulled it behind the horse and pulled it behind the tractors when they first got tractors. So
wow.
Yeah, it's probably pushing 100 years old.
That's pretty cool. All right. Well, we should probably take a break, I suppose. But coming up, we got Trevor Lo, a bass guide on Mille Lacs. He was also the college champion, the Carhartt Bassmaster College Series champion in 2015. We'll talk with him coming up. Also, Joe Henry's got an ice conditions report and a fishing report from Lake of the Woods, and more with David and Dan when we come back.
852 million acres of public land, 147 million private properties, all in the palm of your hand. The #1 hunting GPS app just got better. With hundreds of custom map layers, 3D and topographic maps, you can easily scout on the road or at home before you go. And now you can get important weather details, CWD detection, and even know what crops have been planted where. Get the most trusted hunting GPS app ever made. OnX. Know where you stand with OnX. We're back, Sporting Journal Radio. Thanks for tuning in on this radio station right here or watching this on YouTube or downloading the podcast. I'm Bret Amundson along with Dan Amundson and David Eckhardt. It's been warm this fall. Of course, that's affected deer hunters, bow hunters, pheasant hunters, waterfowl hunters. We tried to goose hunt the other day, Dan. That didn't go very well for us.
We are dealing with, I think probably the last few weeks we had the most geese around we've had all year.
Yeah.
I saw someone on TikTok. We were talking about the 90-day, 60-day duck season deal, and somebody's like, "Oh, I can't believe there's grown men in Minnesota that think the peak birds are here in December." I'm like, "Well, they are in our area of the state." So
in our area,
yeah, and not everywhere, but in our area. So let's put that out there. But they are stale as can be, and they've seen A-frames, they've seen layup lines, they've seen decoys. And they've been tough, but some people have gotten into them if the conditions are right. But yeah, we kind of made it a point. We're not going to hunt unless we have the right weather anymore for the rest of the year.
It was like 35, 40 degrees with zero wind. It was a nice day, and they came out a mile high and could pick us out. And yeah, right at sunset. But, as far as the migration goes, I guess it's all in perspective. Not only is it where you live, but it's also what you're talking about. If you're talking about blue-winged teal, yeah, September's
peak numbers of blue-winged teal, shocker, aren't here in December.
Right. If you're talking about green wings, you might be talking about November. If you're talking about, wood ducks and other ducks, you might be talking about October. But for us, like the first half of October is garbage. September's the local birds. They get bumped out by all the hunting that takes place in September. And then we have to wait. And we have to wait. We have to wait longer and longer every year because of either milder temperatures or because of all the grain that the birds are eating up north. And when you want to talk about Canada geese, EPP Canada geese for us and mallards, man, there's more around right now than there has been all fall. And I can show you in fact, I'm going to show you some videos. This was something else I was going to bring up about what metro areas have done to the migration and also to waterfowl hunting in general is as cities grow, they're becoming big giant refuges for waterfowl. So when you discuss access and limiting access and factors that are affecting the migrations, a lot of farmers get blamed, droughts get blamed, shifting patterns, but there isn't as much discussion about growing cities. And there is a field where I kind of grew up in the Southeast Metro, the Twin Cities. There was a cornfield that's still there, and it's surrounded by the city essentially and all these developments. But when I was there, it absolutely was jam-packed with mallards. So I don't know if this video will play or not, but
apparently not. I
guess not. So this was mallards. And if you look kind of in that background, there is a bunch of buildings and power lines, and there's a shopping center. And I just love this video. So this is just a mass of mallards. They're all spinning in different directions. I don't know how they're not smashing into each other. But this is in a cornfield in the city limits in Woodbury, Minnesota, in the metro. So all these mallards that when I was a kid, I could have hunted this field. So now you talk about restricting access in another way in a growing metro. And not just that, but you've got some of these retention ponds that these developments and these shopping centers are building. And some of them have some warm water discharges, and they'll keep mallards around all year. There's a park in Shakopee, and I love it. I love this place. I stop there all the time. And there's people feeding these ducks. These are wild ducks. There are some farm ducks mixed in, and definitely some that have gotten accustomed to humans. But if you play this next video, let's see if this one will play, the mallard just walking around the entire parking lot. You pull up into the parking lot and there's just mallards just sitting there in the grass or in the park. Literally, they had to get up and move from where I was going to park. They were laying.
The unfortunate nature of this is I didn't realize that video made the cut while I was doing my show prep.
Okay.
It is not in the system.
All right. So anyway, it's a cool place to go. It gets you a chance to see these ducks up close, and if you talk about feeding wildlife benefits, negative aspects to it, whatever your opinions are on that, it still allows you to see waterfowl really close. They're there all winter, and here's that mallard. He's just walking around. I'm like 5-10 feet away from him. And they would slowly kind of walk by and then just walk back down to the water or fly to the water. This guy just kind of waddling along and says, this looks like a good place to hang out. And then just
not bothered at all.
No, just lays down and takes a nap right in front of me. So it's a neat play. It's almost like having a zoo, and they are wild ducks, and the majority of them probably migrate in and out. But some of them stay there, and it definitely holds birds that without this could be birds that we could be hunting somewhere. Obviously, the season is closed, so we couldn't, but now these cities are becoming giant refuges. So I'm not quite sure what this, I've just been thinking about this with all the mallards I saw in the Twin Cities metro area this past weekend. I don't know what to do there. I don't know what the right answer is. Obviously, I want to be able to hunt ducks later in the season in Minnesota, so that's number one. I don't know if you'll ever be able to do anything about the metro ducks, and like I said, they're kind of neat to see anyway. But hopefully, we can at least hunt ducks later in the season when this giant push of mallards. This is the most mallards I've seen in Minnesota all year. So argue with us all you want about when the peak migration is, but right now we have tons of mallards here in Minnesota. All right, we're going to switch to fishing, though. We'll talk to Joe Henry coming up and Trevor Lo on Sporting Journal Radio.
Live Target, the leader in Match the Hatch, is back with new lures that also match the action. Introducing the Live Craw. The Live Craw is irresistible to bass, walleye, and other freshwater species. FTech's winner, the Ultimate Frog, looks and acts just like a swimming frog. With an exposed ultra-point mustad hook and replaceable legs, the Ultimate Frog has 2 styles, 2 sizes, and 8 colors. And iCast and FTech's winner, the Live Shrimp, mimics a fleeing shrimp for saltwater anglers. Coming soon from Live Target. Ice fishing season is here. This winter, plan a trip to Devils Lake, North Dakota. Not only will you have the chance to catch their legendary perch, but this year, Haybale Heights has been catching big walleye after big walleye. And they're doing it from a mobile, comfortable snow bear. No matter how cold it is outside, you're warm and toasty on the inside. Learn more and book a trip today at haybaleheights.com. That's haybaleheights.com. All right, now it's time to bring in Joe Henry from Lake of the Woods Tourism on Sporting Journal Radio. And can we just go back to the RAV4 hybrid real quick? I think we figured out what that noise was. Play that video one more time, Dan. All right, and so David, before we went to break, you thought maybe it was just a noise to alert people that the car is running?
It's a safety feature, was my guess.
And it made sense. Dan, what did you think about that?
I thought you were wrong because, well, I had some logic because say, okay, where are there pedestrians? Big cities. You're walking through the big, mainly. I know there's pedestrians other places, but you're walking through the big city. There's sirens and buildings burning down and whatever, and this and that. And are you going to hear that? I don't think so. But I guess I was wrong. And I'm man enough to admit David was right and I was wrong based on our preliminary research.
I mean, it's a little loud. So I Googled it, and apparently, so I had Danny Thompson in the vehicle while I was just filming the exterior of that. And I do remember making him back up just a little bit from where he was. And maybe he had it in reverse, because that angelic like noise is like a backup beeper for a truck. When a truck beeps to alert people that it's backing up, that's essentially what that noise is, since there's no engine noise, I suppose. Mm-hmm. So
I was wrong. Called it. Good job, David.
Pretty wild. That's on the RAV4 Hybrid Woodland Edition from Toyota. Joe, I got a new Tundra, and you're driving a Tundra that you've driven for 8 billion miles, if I remember correctly.
Well, I always kid around, and of course I'm just joking when I say this, but I kid around with my buddies who drive more domestic types, as they would say, the Chevy, Fords, GMCs, things like that. And I tell them, I'm like, man, if I had your guys' money, I could drive domestic. I got to drive a Toyota. I got to make it last.
Can't afford those repairs.
McAllister with Toyota will appreciate that story, but no, I do. I'm driving an 07 Tundra, and I got 357,000 on it, and I tell you, I've had to get stuff done over time, but it still runs really well. And gosh, when I think about, it's been paid for a number of times, and yeah, I still like the truck, and it still runs well, and it's got that 5.7 liter in it. I got a towing capacity of 10,500 pounds, so when I pull my 3,000 pound boat, it doesn't feel like it's back there. And yeah, it just for me, it's a good truck for my fishing and hunting.
Well, and it's pretty interesting. The Toyota Tundra has been built in America since its birth in 1999. Originally, the Tundra was built in Princeton, Indiana, and then in 2006 they moved it to San Antonio, Texas. So the Tundra has always been built in the United States. And right now I've got the 3.4 twin turbo, Joe. So this truck's a lot of fun. But all right, let's move on and let's talk. I mean, I'll talk about this truck all day. I love this truck, so I'll talk about it all day. But we should probably talk about ice fishing. We should talk about Lake of the Woods. How are things going up there?
Yeah, things are coming along. I just saw that one of the resorts is starting to ice fish up in the northwest angle. So they got some good ice up there. It's been pretty solid. It didn't break up as much, of course, because it's smaller. You're amongst the islands. So when that ice up there formed, it didn't blow around and such. So it's good shape. They're starting to ice fish up there a little bit. And down on the south end, I know that things are progressing. I know that they've staked trails across a number of the bays. I know that some of the ice guides have gone out on the main lake and have checked ice conditions, and they're doing some work out there. I never want to say that we're open for business on the south end for ice fishing. I don't want to say that we're not, because it's so different. Everywhere you go across that south shore, there's some areas where, there was some open water that just healed up a few days ago with a cold, and there's other areas that are pretty solid. So it's going to be starting here anytime. And, the one thing I'll say for safety, I'll say this to listeners, just like I say to my friends and family. Hey, when you go on Lake of the Woods, whatever resort or outfitter you work through, they're dealing with that piece of ice in the area that they go out of, where they access Lake of the Woods. Pay attention to what they say. Follow the rules they have for their trail and their road when they open up. They might say, okay, we're going to start out, it's all ATVs and snowmobiles. And then they go to side-by-sides and small vehicles. And then they'll let, you pull out a wheelhouse with a side-by-side. And then, but they have all these rules because they want to make sure you're safe. They also don't want to wreck the ice. And I would just say that when the time comes, follow social media, follow Lake of the Woods tourism, and we're certainly going to be getting the word out there when things start happening, which is going to be very, very soon, I think. But again, I'm going to let the pros on the ice determine that and pull that trigger.
Early ice always can be really good, and Lake of the Woods is no exception. But since it's building a little bit later this year, it's going to give the lake kind of a nice little break, right? I mean, I think once that ice does form and people are fishing up there, things maybe could be even better this year. You give the fish I know during the COVID years of some of the Canada lakes that I go to, when we were closed for a couple of years and gave the lake a little bit of a rest, man, when we came back, it was just on fire. So granted, this would be a shorter break than the COVID experience, but it might make things really good up there.
Oh, I agree, 100%. I mean, we know that there's a pile of fish out in front of that south end, as an example, because of fall fishing. People that were going out fall fishing were going out there and anchoring up and jigging in 25 feet of water and stroking walleyes and saugers, like good numbers. They're also seeing tons of bait on their electronics. So those fish, we believe, are still there. I do know there have been a few ice guides playing around a little bit and just doing a little experimenting there, catching fish. And so it's been, I think it's going to be real good. And to your point, it's funny, we always joke around, even if there's like a big section of lake, as an example, let's say that it has ice shards sticking way up and it's just impossible to get to. And that'll happen from time to time in different areas of the lake. We all say, that's Mother Nature's way of protecting that part of the lake, giving those fish a little bit of a refuge. But the thing is, Lake of the Woods is so big. I mean, even Big Traverse Bay, we get a lot of traffic on Lake of the Woods, but you also got to remember, going across Big Traverse Bay, it's about 30 miles north-south by about 25 miles east-west. A lot of the bigger lakes people talk about in Minnesota, you could put multiple numbers of those lakes within that Big Traverse Bay and they would fit. So we're talking some really big water. Even though you might see a lot of ice houses spread out for as far as you can see across that south shore in different areas, you still got a huge part of that lake that when you snowmobile across, Brett, as you know, because we've done it, I'll tell you what, you get out there and you're like, holy smokes, I'm looking for miles and I can see a couple of houses and that's it,
Is that what line am I looking at there, Dan?
I just made one to show how big the lake is.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah. Okay. And I got a waypoint there. I don't know what it is. Nobody go there, though.
So once we are up there fishing, Joe, what's the first thing you're taking out of your tackle box?
You know, I'm going to probably start out with probably a rip and wrap. I'm going to put a rip and wrap on my jigging line, and then on my dead stick, I'll probably just put a plain red hook with a little split shot above it, and then I'm either going to use a bobber that's set for that weight in the minnow, or and probably one of those foam bobbers, the ice buster bobber, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to play around with that rip and wrap a little bit, and then I'm gonna have whoever I'm fishing with, most likely I'll be fishing with somebody, I'll have them probably start with a jigging spoon and a minnow head, and then I'm gonna see how the fish are reacting to that rip and wrap. I'll watch my electronics, see what their mood is. Are they pulling in? Are they coming in on it? Are they, whatever? I mean, are they hitting it? Are they not hitting it? But then I'll move. I'm not afraid to change lures. I use a little bit of a snap on my line so I can change lures quickly. I think I can get away with that because it's stained water. That water isn't gin clear. And you know what? Then I think next I'll probably go with, there's a lot of great spoons in the market. The one spoon I really like on Lake of the Woods, it's kind of a small to mid-size Northland macho minnow. That macho minnow has a little bit of a piece of tail metal down on that bottom clevis where the treble hook goes, and I kind of like that clanking on there a little bit. I also like the one that's got some golden red on one side, and the other side is glow red. I would also not be afraid to go with. I might try to keep it clean. Stop sign jigging spoon. Tom's Tackle comes out with that one. That keep it clean color is that glow white with some. You can see it's got some yellow and some green and some blue in it. And that's just a good lure anyway. And then, of course, that glow white color is good for Lake of the Woods.
I think the fish also understand what keep it clean is and are more willing to bite that because it's good for the lake, I think.
Well, especially those educated fish that haven't been beat on, for a while. I mean, they're going to be sitting out there pretty juiced up to learn,
Yeah.
So.
Do you have a Canadian version if you're going to fish the Ontario side? Is there one in Canadian?
I never. We actually didn't think of that. But we do have some Canadians looking at the Keep It Clean program. So until they sign up for that, then we'll go that direction.
We should bring that up real quick, Joe, about the change in legislation this year about bringing stuff on the ice.
Yeah, so there is a change in Minnesota. So the Keep It Clean legislation says that, starting I think in July of this summer, 2023, it is now illegal to place any kind of trash, garbage, waste, either on or below the ice, meaning in the water. That means that when you're ice fishing, you need to, put your garbage and waste and such. You got to keep it in your fish house, put it in the back of a truck, or in a container of some type, like a garbage can or something like that, or a bucket, maybe a 5-gallon pail. But you can't put it directly on the ice. And we believe that this law will. It's a good law, and we believe that it's going to literally keep tons and tons of garbage from going into the Minnesota waterways unexpectedly. Yeah, I think there's a lot of good people out there that mean well, but when you're out sleeping overnight on the ice a few nights, and let's just set our bags outside the fish house door. We'll certainly pick them up before we go. Man, things happen. 40-mile-an-hour winds. You got birds tearing into it. You got snow that covers things up. You have bags that freeze into the ice, so when you pull them up, all the contents get scattered, and then you try to collect them all, and some blow away. I mean, just different things happen. Even the ice chunks. If you put wood down or something to block your fish house up and it freezes in, you pull your fish house away, that wood stays behind. That's garbage. Take a moment and chisel that out and bring it with you.
All right, Joe. Well, we can obviously learn more about that on your website, and we can go there to learn more about booking a trip to Lake of the Woods this year.
You know what, I'll tell you, we got everything on there, including videos. I think we even have some pictures of you, Brett, holding up a big a monster eel pout. We don't have
photoshopped.
Photoshop, maybe your face. No, I'm just kidding. We do have Danny, aka Freddie Mercury. We him up there just because we talk about him so much, and we didn't do the wisdom thing with Danny today either. By the way,
remember we got
the wisdom thing with
do you got one for us,
little Danny? Danny, I would say this: as human beings, we're born with 2 ears and 1 mouth. You have to learn to listen twice as much as you talk. And I think overall you do a pretty good job of it, but it just always a good lesson to consider.
Thanks. I heard that, Joe. I listened to it. You know how much I talk? I listened to every word you said today, and you had so much wisdom.
Is that right?
Hey, you know what? It's safer for me to tell you, and really the message might be directed towards Bret, but it's hard for me to tell.
Wow. Well, we're out of time, Joe.
Hey, I got a brand new 2024 Platinum Tundra in my driveway as we speak.
Really?
The kicker is it's a loaner vehicle because I'm getting a couple things done to mine. But anyway, you know, Bret.
That's fun to drive.
Oh, things like a spaceship. It's unbelievable. I had to buzz down to the cities yesterday and for some meetings. I'll tell you what, that thing is like a spaceship. Once I learned the dials on that thing, man alive, it's pretty cool. And then, of course, it's like you got to have a darn like a laptop right built into the dashboard. It's almost like a tablet. And a man, you know, between XM radio, listen to Lithium and oh man, it was just,
I love Lithium.
Yeah.
All right, Joe. Well, if people want to take their Tundras up to Lake of the Woods this winter, how should they book a trip?
Hey, check out our website, and that is lakeofthewoodsmn.com.
Lake of the Woods, the walleye capital of the world, is calling out to you. From the northwest angle to the South Shore and Rainy River, this is the Midwest's #1 ice fishing destination. Walleyes, sauger, perch, northern pike, and eelpout. The fishing on Lake of the Woods is like a world of its own. Experience the most amazing fishing through one of the many full-service resorts featuring heated fish houses, ice transportation, meal plans, and sleeper fish house options. For more information, go to lakeofthewoodsmn.com.
All right, we're back. Sporting Journal Radio. Thanks for tuning in on this radio station here on the radio network. By demand, sportingjournalradio.com. Wherever you get your favorite podcasts and by watching this on YouTube, make sure to subscribe, give us a like, give us a comment below as well on our YouTube channel. Dan Amundson, David Eckhardt with us. And right now we're going to bring in Trevor Lo. Trevor grew up in Minnesota. He won the Carhartt Bassmaster College Series in 2015. He won the title of college champion in his first year. That qualified him for the Bassmaster Classic in 2016. He currently fishes in tournaments in the region and guides on Mille Lacs. He's also an Omnia. Would you say you're a Omnia Pro staff, or what would you say your affiliation with Omnia is?
Yeah, I mean, technically an employee here.
Employee. Okay, you are. All right.
Yep. So my title technically is the marketing manager for pro staff and sponsorships. So kind of had a lot of those, partnerships and sponsorships, contracts, that sort of stuff, as well as other things with the company.
All right. And I also just have to say, I was going to talk about the picture on your website, on the homepage on the website, but I see it also in the background of this shot right here. I loved Iron Man, so I think that's pretty cool that you got the mask. Well, I guess you can't see it in this shot, but when we got the solo shot there, Trevor, you can see it in the background.
Yeah.
Tell me about the mask.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just I'm a big Marvel fan, a big Iron Man fan, and it's kind of a running joke in my family. All the cousins that I grew up with, we all have our favorite superheroes. So Iron Man is my favorite, and so the mask, is obviously kind of trademarked. And then even at the Classic, when they pulled me in for the weigh-in, I had AC/DC "Shoot to Thrill" going, just because that's the
awesome
song that he comes into in the first Avengers movie. So big time Iron Man fan, and that's kind of how that whole thing played out.
Well, I want to talk about the Classic because that had to be just a wild experience. But before we do that, let's just go back to the beginning and tell me how you got into fishing.
Yeah, I grew up fishing. So I'm part of the Hmong community in Minnesota here. Big into fishing. Generally speaking, it was for food, so your panfish, your crappies, that sort of thing. But as you get older, you start targeting bass, seeing the Elite Series guys and the top 100 or the top 150, and seeing those guys fish competitively just gave me that desire to go out there and fish and try to try my hand at it. But I would say my dad is the one who introduced fishing to me at a young age.
That's cool. So he grew up fishing as well then?
He kind of had two loves, soccer and the outdoors. So my brother and I both grew up playing soccer, but my brother took on to soccer more than I did. And then I ended up taking on the outdoors more so than my brother did.
Okay. That's one thing I've learned about the Hmong community, just the how much the outdoors are part of your culture.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, it stems from when we, I guess we call it the motherland back in Laos. So the Hmong people are an indigenous group up in the mountains of Laos, and, outdoors is kind of what they know. So, hunting, fishing, anything outdoors, that's pretty big in the Hmong community.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. All right, and then you fished in college then. Was that, I've seen the University of Minnesota logo. Did you go to the U then? Is that where you went?
Yeah, I was at the U during the year that I won the college series. I ended up finishing school at a smaller university here in Minnesota, in the Twin Cities. But when I won the college series, I was at the U of M.
Okay, so did you just do 1 year there then?
It's kind of funny. So my freshman year I went there, then I transferred out to get my generals done. Then I transferred back in, and then my final year I transferred back out. So
okay,
it was like a 2-time stint.
How did they have I guess I haven't paid as much attention to the college fishing world as much as Dan has, because he worked with the Bemidji team. What's the program like at the U, and what was it like to be a part of the college fishing world?
Yeah, so that was my first year in it, so it was kind of like just getting my feet wet. But it's completely different from a lot of the Southern college programs. We were basically a student group there, not affiliated with the university whatsoever. Although, when I won the college series, they did kind of make it a little difficult to get the logo and the branding on the truck and the boat, and that whole deal. But basically the same as your Harry Potter Quidditch club or something like that at the U of M. So
that.
Not affiliated. So most everything came out of pocket. And the university doesn't really do much with that, but that's completely different from down south.
Can I say how frustrating that is for Minnesota schools? Like, it's Minnesota. We're a state of fishing, and I don't think there's one university or college in Minnesota that really does a good job at supporting their fishing team. And maybe you know of one that does, but I know Bemidji State wasn't super great with it. It was the same thing. It was a club, not a team, and I get there's rules on some of that, but it's Minnesota. We're a fishing state. Why? I don't know. It's kind of crazy to me. And people are going to these schools for their fishing teams.
Yeah, I think, at least when I was doing my college search back in high school, the two schools outside of the University of Minnesota that I looked at was NC State. One, I had family down in North Carolina, and two, they were like the top team in fishing that year or that year previous. And then the second team was Virginia Tech, and that was essentially for their fishing team as well. So definitely hear that. I think when we were fishing on the college series, it was, I guess, I wouldn't say necessarily frustrating, but you definitely had a little bit of envy when you could see 3 teams from one school roll up with all wrapped boats, brand new rigs and everything like that. And we're out here fishing, 18, 19 footers that are barely scooting by with, super basic electronics, but it's all right.
So tell me about 2015. You win the college series. What all did that entail? How'd that work?
Yeah, so we the way the tournament format was structured, or the college series was structured, was you have regional qualifiers. So our Midwestern regional qualifier was on lacrosse, the Mississippian lacrosse, so pool 7, 8, 9, I believe it was what it was. And we actually took the last qualifying spot. I think it was 13th out of like 80 teams or something like that. And then they bring you to the national championship later on in that year, and that was on Stevens Point on Lake Dubay, which is the absolute worst fishery that I've ever been to in my life.
Wow.
And I think, part of the reason was, University of Wisconsin Stevens Point had one of the biggest fishing teams in the country. So logistically, it helps to have a lot of the, the student body or the team help with weigh-ins and all that sort of stuff, and just a little bit of promotion on that end. But there was like 80 teams in that tournament as well. And mind you, it's a 3-fish limit in Wisconsin, at least for that part of the river during that time of year. And I think on day one, like 50 boats zeroed, so just not a good fishery at all. And so we ended up taking second place in that tournament. So what they do then is they take the top 4 teams and they will break you up. Everybody gets a boat to use provided by Bassmaster, and they seed you. So 1 versus 8 on the first day, 2 versus 7. And then you fish against one person And if you win, you go to the next day, you win, you go to the final day and you win, then you win. So,
and you win and you
correct.
Qualify for the Classic in 2016. I mean, I think as Dan described it earlier, this is maybe not quite exactly the same, but
well,
it's like
no, yeah. I said it's like if you win the NFL punt, kick, and pass contest, and then you become in high school or middle school or whatever, and then you get thrown into the Super Bowl, and you're starting in the Super Bowl.
I mean, that had to be wild. Tell me about that experience.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. Like I said, my first year in the college series, and we my partner and I, we talked about it because Brett Pruitt was the winner the year before me, and he knows Brett personally, and he's like, yeah, man, if you make it to the Classic, or you make it to the national championship, and then you got to go to the bracket, it ends up being like 9 straight days of 14 hours of days of fishing, and I was like, man, I wonder if that's got to be so exhausting. And then you get thrown right in the middle of it from the national championship practice to the championship tournament to the bracket tournament right after that. And I remember on the final day waking up at like 4 a.m, and it had been, like I said, 9 straight days of this. And I woke up in the hotel and my mom was there, and I was like, Mom, I'm so tired. She's like, get up and go fish this tournament. You need to go win. So
yeah, that's awesome.
But yeah, it's crazy because, when I fished the Classic, that was the 12th tournament that I'd fished in my lifetime, considering taking in all, small little pickup club derbies and that sort of thing. So you talk about going from basically no tournament experience all the way to the Super Bowl. And yeah, it's unbelievable, but wouldn't trade it for the world.
So you're walking out, Shoot the Thrill comes on, lights are flashing. Tell me about what you were feeling at that moment.
Yeah, it's unreal. I mean, I think the BOK Center in Tulsa, holds like 19,000 people in the stands or something like that. Or at least that's how many people were there. And it's incredible. I mean, lights come in all different directions pointing at you. You're sitting in your boat, they're pulling you in on the trailer and everything like that. Unfortunately, I didn't have any fish for the tournament. I zeroed in that tournament, but somebody's got to take last place, so it's totally fine. But yeah, no, it's cool because you step out on stage and Mercer's there, and he's got such a good commanding presence on stage too. But yeah, and then you walk through this crowd. I guess you call it the I don't know, kind of like a. I don't even know how to describe that small little pool of individuals, but then the stage is cool. They've got the fan section with your parents, your family, and everything like that. They give everybody these like sticks with a bobble, like a big head poster cut out of you, and it's just really cool. So
that's cool. That's cool. They still bring you out there like that and let you get to, even with a zero, you get to experience all that. All right. For our radio network, we got to let everybody go, but we're going to continue our conversation with Trevor Lo on the podcast. So go download it now at sportingjournalradio.com or continue watching this on YouTube.
Looking for winter adventure? Might as well pick a place with over 1,000 lakes. Otter Tail County, Minnesota is in the middle of everywhere, offers a simpler pace, and has something for everyone. Find your inner otter at ottertaillakescountry.com.
All right, so you get to go through that whole experience, and then you decided to fish the Bass Elites after that?
So when you win the college series, they pay your entry fees for the Bassmaster Opens the following year. So that's like 9 tournaments to qualify you for the Elite Series. And it's all over the country. So I traveled, Florida for the Southern Swing, and then Louisiana down to Alabama, all the way up to New York and everything in between. So fished kind of all over the country that year. All
right. How was that? I mean, that's pretty intense fishing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. You're going against, I would say like probably a third of the field are locals that are trying to, win one of these big Opens tournaments, because that gets you a spot into the Classic that following year. So you get a lot of these guys where the tournament's on their home lake and you're like, woohoo, let's go and see if we can win this thing and make it into a Classic, and so as somebody who has very little experience in that part of the country, let alone tournament experience, it's very challenging to go try to break down just these massive bodies of water in like 4 days, and try to compete with the guys that have been fishing there for 20 years.
That Classic was in 2016. Talk about how different it would be if you were fishing in that tournament today, nowadays.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I learned about that tournament was not to get out of my element and try to fish things that I wasn't comfortable fishing. I mean, that year there was like record flooding on Grand Lake, and the water was super muddy and cloudy and dirty. And so being from Minnesota, you don't really deal with muddy water all that much. It's a lot of clear, natural stuff. And so, I found some stuff in practice in clear water, and I was able to catch fish on that. But, I kind of listened to the doc talk a little too much and wanted to try to go catch fish in the south end of the lake where everybody said that the quality was coming out of, and just got out of my element and then didn't do well. So that on top of, advancements in technology, I think, forward-facing sonar is going to play a huge role if you were to go back nowadays. But, I feel like everybody's kind of beat that topic to death, so we won't go too much in detail on that.
Sure. I mean, and that I did want to just touch on that just for a second, because when you look at, say, even Mille Lacs, where you got on Mille Lacs, right?
Yep.
And as a bass angler, I know when Bassmaster came, a lot of people got worried, like, oh no, like Mille Lacs wasn't a secret, but nationally, maybe a little bit of a secret still nationally. Between what that tournament did and fishing on that lake since that tournament, and then with forward-facing sonar, have you seen any changes or any sort of negative effects up there on Mille Lacs?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the pressure from anglers, without a doubt, has definitely conditioned the fish to not be as eager to eat. I think, we've really had to downsize, bait presentations. You used to be able to go out there, before the Elite Series came and for their Angler of the Year tournament, and just go and find basically any boulder and just, you could vertically drop a drop shot straight down on it and get bit. But nowadays I feel the fish are a little more sluggish. I'm pretty confident that, they've seen everything thrown at them now. They're getting pinged with sonar like crazy. So I can't imagine that it doesn't have a negative effect. But I will say with forward-facing sonar, it definitely allows you to understand their behavior a little bit more. I had a trip there a couple years back, and we're throwing finesse TRDs, that Z-Man Ned rig, and we're pointing at a fish and we're throwing at them, and you'll see the bait fall down on your graph and then right in front of the fish, and he would just take off and run away from it, and from there we downsized to an even smaller bait, and every subsequent fish after that we were able to catch them. But without forward-facing sonar, you're really not going to be able to determine that. Just blindly casting and trying to guess whether or not your bait is just something they don't want to eat. But yeah, I think the pressure has definitely gotten to the fish, but there's still plenty of fish out there to be caught.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing about forward-facing sonar, because I'm all about it. Once I got a live scope, I kind of freaked out a little bit, and I was like, this is amazing because of the education. I've not caught fish because I've been using it. You'll mark fish and just try to pound them. Like, these fish got a bite. They're here. I'm just using the wrong presentation. I'm doing it too fast. I'm doing it too slow. I got to downsize. And you waste time on it. Dan and I fished a tournament last summer and wasted, I don't know, an hour on those fish probably that we were marking. I'm stubborn. So, so am I. There's that. So I'm too, to some extent. But the education and the ability to see all the behavior. What were you going to say, David?
My camera's froze.
Oh.
Looks good, David.
That's good. David's just, he's just listening intently.
Intently listening.
He followed Joe Henry's advice. Listen more.
That's hilarious. Well, what you've been able to learn from fish behavior, you can see, obviously on 2D, you could see an arc or a mark, and you're like, okay, there's a fish down there, especially if you're trolling. You're like, all right, I'm about to bring my bait across that mark. He's just sitting there laying on the bottom. And then when you do that same troll with forward-facing sonar, you realize most of the time they're not just sitting down there. They're moving around, or they're seeing the bait coming, or they're spinning around behind it to check it out, or you're spooking them completely, and they're long gone by the time you get into that that zone. So I think where it's really had the biggest effect is finding suspended fish, or maybe find fish roaming. You know, sometimes those bigger fish, maybe they had some escape zones where they could get away, and they're away from structure. They're not on the bottom. You know, people weren't targeting them suspended as much as they are now. So I think that's where you're seeing the biggest effect. But I'm all for it. I just think it's going to maybe lower some limits, which, as I think all of us have talked about many times in the show here, we're okay with seeing, particularly like walleyes or crappies, we're okay with seeing limits get lowered. Now, especially with when you're talking about bass and smallies and largemouth too, most people are catch and release. What do you think? I mean, do you think that there could be any potential changes, or maybe using changes in technology use in tournaments coming down the line at all?
Yeah, I think that lowering limits would be good. I feel the only angler that would hurt is necessarily potentially somebody who doesn't have access to electronics of that caliber. You know, your bank fisherman, your shore fisherman, that sort of thing. Maybe even a kayak angler or a canoe angler. But in regards to tournaments, you know, I would imagine there's going to be some sort of limit to the number of transducers you can have. You know, there's a lot of talk about guys that, you know, they'll have a forward-facing transducer. They have one that's also perspective mode in the front, and they also do that in the back. And then now you've got like 360 degrees live around your boat. And so I think there will be some sort of limitations to it because there's enough chatter about it happening online that if, you know, these major tournament entities, Bassmaster, MLF, NPFL, if they don't do something about it, I feel that could negatively hurt their viewership. And just, you know, you hear it all the time on Bassmaster Live or any of the live streams. It's like, we're sick and tired of watching people's butts as they just look down at their screen, you know? So if that's going to hurt their viewership, then, you know, they might take some action into it.
See, and that's what's interesting, because we're walleye guys. Most of us are mainly walleye guys. I watched a lot of the Bassmaster stuff too, but I also watched the NWT a lot. And granted, that's not the same as watching Bassmaster, but watching the walleye guys now with forward-facing sonar and a lot of glide baits and stuff, I've found like I get excited to watch them do that and watch them live scope instead of the traditional, okay, we're trolling crankbaits, this and that. So it's really interesting to
It's more like bass fishing almost.
Almost.
A lot of casting.
Yeah, and I don't want to make it sound like bass fishing is more exciting than walleye fishing. It's interesting to get those two perspectives, because so many anglers, I think, can get caught in their own world, whether it's bass guys, walleye guys, muskie guys, or whoever, can get caught in their own world and say, well, no, live scope's great, or forward-facing sonar is great, but no, it's terrible. And there's a whole, especially in a state as diverse as Minnesota, it's a lot of different worlds and a lot of different aspects we need to figure out and play with. And maybe it's a tournament regulation, maybe it's a state regulation, and you might start seeing that, and then the state regulations will play into the tournament regulations. And it's an interesting world we're living in the world of fishing right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know, I don't want to bring video games into it or say we have to have video game like entertainment to get kids involved. I don't really want to go down that road, but when you can bring, I mean, I remember when I got into ice fishing and I would just sit there and just jig blindly. And then the first time I used electronics, I'm like, oh, my head exploded. Like, oh my gosh, I can see a fish coming in and chasing my bait up and down. Like, I got a red mark. Holy smokes. And then the same thing happened when I saw live scope. And if you are going to bring kids out, number one rule, of course, snacks, right? But if you can give them, especially when fish are off a little bit, if you can give them a peek under that surface into that unseen world, even if, you know, like that day when we sat for an hour and we had 20, 30 different fish, we were it's a river system, so who knows what kind of fish they were. They weren't biting, but there was constantly fish down there. And especially when you see a giant carp roll through, like I was looking at, we were in 4 feet of water that one time, and there was like, you know, 3-foot carp rolling through in 4 feet of water. I mean, it filled the entire live scope screen practically. Like, that's amazing. And to be able to show somebody that, you know, give them a peek into that underwater world that they normally wouldn't see. I mean, it's almost like using an aqua view for the first time when you can see what things actually look like under the surface. That's amazing. And I think it could do so much to promote fishing in general. And the DNR is going to have to come up with something. I've been asked to help kind of gather some research and give opinions on the effects of forward-facing sonar. So I always like talking to people like you and get your opinions on it as well too, because there probably will have to be some changes coming, and I don't want to see the technology taken away because I think it's amazing. But I think at the end of the day, you're just going to have to see maybe lowering of limits, which again probably should have been happening before some of these advancements in technology anyway.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. I mean, technology is always going to be advancing. I don't think we're ever going to get to a point where we say, all right, stop innovating, and we need to get creative as a community, as a society, to figure out how do we continue to adapt with technology advancements. So I think, whether it's lowering limits, I think that could be a solution. I'm sure there's other ones that I can't think of off the top of my head, but there have been people that are able to catch fish just extraordinarily well for the last 30, 40 years that can still catch them just as well. And the flip side is true too. There are plenty of guys that fish tournaments that have, $20,000 worth of electronics on their boats and they still can't catch fish either, So,
well, I mean, I've got a little 16-foot Lund that I've got painted camouflage, and there's a couple community holes I fish with that when you're next to some of these guys with $80,000 rigs, and you're catching just as many fish out of it.
And they're like, your live scope's worth more than your boat.
Yeah, it definitely is. That's for sure. I want to talk about bass fishing real quick, and then I want to talk about some more technology and what Omnia's got coming out. But let's talk about, if somebody who's watching this right now and they want to think about fishing for smallies, and maybe they're going to go to Mille Lacs, maybe they're going to go to the river, maybe they got some other lakes that they want to go fish. How often are you going to different places and picking the same presentation to start with, or how much research are you doing? I know Omnia does this lake specific tackle, which I think is brilliant, by the way. How often are you trying to, match the hatch or trying to pick something specific for a body of water? Or do you just like, this is my favorite rig for smallmouth, this is what I'm starting with no matter what? Yeah, I mean, everybody has their favorite baits. Mine for smallmouth is going to be a paddle tail swim bait on a little ball head jig, kind of like your 1/8 ounce, 3/16 little 3-inch swimmer or something like that. But I think, a lot of it comes down to understanding what bottom composition looks like. Match the hatch is pretty important. Fish eat fish. So I think you can't really go wrong with throwing a swimmer. But my bigger thing would probably be water temperature. That's probably going to be the first thing that I look at. And granted, if you have some way of telling what the temperature of the water is on any given river or lake, that's going to be super helpful in terms of figuring out what part of the water column the fish are going to be at. Are they going to be do they want to be in current? Because if it's really, really hot water, they're going to want to have some current around them. They're not going to be wanting to be in stagnant water or anything like that. So it's a mix of things, but a little paddle tail swimmer is great because you can cover water pretty efficiently with it. You can cover all depths of the water column. You can fish it slow, you can fish it fast. And yeah, I mean, like I said, fish eat fish. So it's a bait fish imitator, and it gets bit, even small bites, big bites. So it doesn't matter. So does Omnia send you around and say, all right, tell me what works on this lake so that we can sell? So when my battery died now, I'll just freeze, stand here. So how do you guys figure out what works best so you can sell body of water specific tackle through Omnia like that? Yeah, so we have our ambassador program. That's one of the things that I head here at Omnia. Essentially, we have anglers around the country. If they go fish, they can come and create an Omnia account, file a fishing report on that particular body of water, make those product recommendations. And if there is a sale on the website that is directly attributed to, that influence, we call it an influence purchase, that individual will earn tackle credit for sharing that information. So let's just say I go and file a fishing report on Mille Lacs. I tag, a Megabass Spark Shad, and somebody comes onto the website, their information has them located, in Minnesota. And so they can see fishing reports near you, and my report will show up. Or if
for example, like you're showing right now, you're on the Mille Lacs Lake page, you'll see these baits being recommended in these fishing reports, and products as well. So if somebody adds a product to cart straight from there, makes a purchase, you get that attribution, and then you earn tackle credit for it. So it's a good program to incentivize some help. And like I said, we're not asking for, spots on the lake. It's more of guidelines so that people, if they need to figure out, hey, what should I be throwing this time of year for this particular species? It's just a way to help them have some success in the water.
That's brilliant. So are you looking for more people to participate in stuff like that, or do you have a kind of a pro staff list that's kind of maxed out, or are you always on the lookout for more people?
Yeah, we're always looking for more help in that. The ambassador program is free for the public to join,
okay.
And it's open to everybody. So whether you trout fish, you walleye fish, you crappie fish, you bass fish, all that information is very valuable to us. It allows us to use our computer machine learning and all the algorithms to punch in different variables based off the season, the species that you're targeting, and helps our customers understand what they should be looking for that time of year.
Well, and we'd heard, and Dan probably knows more than I do, but we've heard that Omnia name around for the last few years, and we met Matt Hamilton at Aglow this year, the conference in Bemidji, when we were up there in September, and he was telling us a little bit more about that, and I just thought that was just a brilliant idea. And then now Omnia is coming out with some more lake information that you can get through the app?
Yeah, that's correct. We have a pretty big initiative this year for our new app subscription called Premium Pro. So we've had our app for, I would say, a little over a year now. Basically, it just makes it easier for you to buy fishing tackle. So don't tell your spouse about it. But yeah, we've streamlined the e-commerce side of our business through the app. We have our premium membership, which is a $29 a year. You get free shipping on all your orders. You get 10% back on your orders as well as tackle credit. And then, we have exclusives for our premium members. And then the one step above that is the one that we're launching this year, or we're doing much more heavy promotion on. It's our Premium Pro subscription, which has different map layers. So you can see here, we have different map layers in our app. So we've got contours, we've got bottom hardness, vegetation layers, satellite derived water temperature, as well as water clarity. So all this stuff at the tips of your fingers, and then you can also layer weather on top of that. So if you pull up a map of Mille Lacs and you've got contours and you want to see how the wind is hitting this particular point or this particular hump, you know exactly how that wind is going to hit that and position potentially, bait fish and the fish that you're targeting. So a lot of really cool stuff. We've got Navionics licensed, and we are just working to get that integrated. Our developers are working on that right now, and that should be out by the end of the year. And we're constantly updating, getting feedback from our users just to see, what other sources of information would be helpful for them. We've talked to kayak anglers and boat landings, as well as public access points are going to be super beneficial to them. So that's another thing that's on the list to be added to.
And let me just add that, so you get 10% back on all your orders. I think all anglers order enough tackle to pay with getting 10% back to get your $50 back. It'll pay for itself like that. You
could pay for a boat with getting 10% back from all the tackle.
Yeah. I mean, seriously though,
at least my boat.
We all know how much anglers buy tackle. Like and I'm guilty of it. I don't have an Omnia premium account, but I should, because it's a no-brainer. It really is.
We can get that squared away.
All right, I like the sound of that.
Well, I think integrating wind and trying to show on an app where the bait fish might be positioned. I think anglers that have been fishing for a long time know what role wind plays, but sometimes I don't think people pay enough attention to what wind is doing out there. I think that's a pretty key component to a successful day on the water.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. And I'm guilty of it as well, of just saying, we're just going to show up and go fish. I know this lake well enough, and I've got my spots that I want to go and take a look at. But I think there have been plenty of times where you get out there and you're like, okay, the wind's hitting it a certain way. Let me figure out if these fish are repositioned a little bit differently on this flat or on this particular ledge or something like that. But it's, the whole goal of this is to have, to help anglers be more successful when they actually make it out on the water, and to be able to do that from, the comfort of their home the night before, as well as just bringing all these different resources into one app. So you don't have to have 5 different apps to see, the storm cells that are coming through, the wind direction, and how heavy that wind is going to be the next day, along with your contours. But yeah, I think it's really cool just to be able to layer everything on top of each other. So, in 2 hours, I can fish this part of the lake, but I can't, because of the storm cells coming through, or, if I need to get off the water by this particular time because the storm is blowing this way, or if there's lightning strikes on the north end of these big reservoirs down south, but I can go fish the south end because that's clear. So a lot of really cool things that you can use with this app.
Yeah, it might just even help you pick something as simple as a boat access, the right one to use.
Just a place to start. Yeah. That's huge, and for a lot of anglers, you need a place to start, and you figure it out from there. But finding that place to start can be intimidating depending where you're at. So that's huge.
Well, Trevor, where can we find more information about Omnia? Download the app, etc. Find all the features, and then where can we find out information about booking a trip with you on Mille Lacs?
Yeah, so OmniaFishing.com is our website. Most everything is on there. We've got a big search bar that you can type in the app, Premium Pro, anything like that, and take you right to those pages. For me, if you want to book a trip with me, you can reach out to me on any of my social media channels, whether that's Facebook, Instagram, and that's just Trevor Lo Fishing, TrevorLo, the shortest last name you might ever run into. And then I also have my website, TrevorLoFishing.com. So.
Oh, and babies.
And babies. That's my little girl. Her name's Lucy. She's about 16 months, a little over 16 months.
Oh,
so
nice.
That's one of my pinned posts because that was pretty life-changing for me.
Sure. Oh, congrats, man. Cool. Well, and congrats on all the success, and good luck with everything this year for guiding, and of course with Omnia. And Trevor Lo, thanks for the time today on the show.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Sporting Journal Radio is a division of Macaba LLC. If you've got a question, comment, or story idea for us, send us an email. Go to sportingjournalradio.com. While you're there, you can learn how to advertise on the show and visit our store for hats, hoodies, coffee mugs, and more. Go to sportingjournalradio.com.